There comes a moment in life that is not announced. It does not arrive with a loud noise or dramatic shift. Instead, it slips in quietly, like dusk settling over a once busy home. You begin to notice it in the little things. A pause before your name is said. The absence of curiosity in their eyes. The way their visits grow shorter and their attention more fractured. They don't ask how you're sleeping anymore. They forget the little things you once reminded them of, things they now keep in their phones. You were once their center, their sun. Now, you orbit on the edge of their world. And though you tell yourself this is part of life, that it's natural, that they're just busy, a quiet ache begins to grow. Not a sharp pain, not an open wound, but something slower, more subtle, a grief made of silence. Carl Jung believed that pain is not always loud. Sometimes it's made of absence, not aggression, of distance, not conflict. And it's this quiet, slow vanishing that becomes the hardest to explain. You gave them everything. Not just time or food or shelter, but parts of your soul. Your patience, your dreams, your presence. And for a long time, that giving defined you. You were the answer to their questions. The calm in their storms. The one who stayed up late, waiting for the door to open. The one who knew what to say, or at least how to listen. But now, the phone doesn't ring like it used to. Holidays come with less tradition. Their lives continue beautifully, independently, and you watch with a mix of pride and quiet sorrow. Because what happens when everything you gave is no longer seen? You don't want to be dramatic. You don't want to complain. You remind yourself of all the blessings. But something deep within still asks, do they see me at all? Not just as the parent or the provider, but as the human beneath it all. The truth is, many who gave everything are now learning to live with a quieter kind of love. One that is not returned with the same urgency. One that must be held without expectation. This is not a failure. This is a transition. Jung spoke of individuation, the process of becoming whole. And sometimes that process begins when the world quiets down. When the roles we once filled begin to fade. When we are no longer needed in the same ways and are invited instead to need ourselves. Maybe you weren't left behind. Maybe you were called inward, back to the center of your own soul, to the self that existed before the roles, before the titles, before the silence. And here in this space, where giving is no longer a currency and being is enough, a new kind of love can begin. Love that is quiet, but real. Love that sees you, even if no one else does yet. It doesn't happen all at once. You're not struck by lightning. You don't have a revelation with trumpets and tears. Instead, it's something quieter, something slower. A moment, a brief one, where you suddenly see things as they are. You might be loading the dishwasher, walking to the mailbox, sitting quietly as the house hums in the distance. And suddenly you think, no one is coming to ask how I'm doing. And for the first time, you stop blaming yourself for that. You don't feel angry. Not exactly. You feel awake. Carl Jung once wrote that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And for years, maybe decades, you believed that disappearing was your fate. That being overlooked was just what happens. That emotional neglect, when it isn't loud, must be your fault. But now something stirs. You begin to ask, why did I believe I had to disappear in order to be loved? It's a terrifying question. Because behind it lives the truth that maybe you were never fully seen to begin with. Not as a whole person. Not as someone with dreams, limits, needs. You were the giver, the strong one, the steady presence. And that role, while noble, became a cage. Now, with the silence around you, something begins to shift. You start noticing your own feelings again. The taste of your morning coffee. The ache in your shoulders you always ignored. The strange sense of calm that comes when no one is asking anything of you. At first, it feels like loss, but then like freedom. This is the awakening. The first gentle moment when you realize that invisibility can also be space. And in that space, your true self can finally speak. You may not know what it wants to say yet. That's okay. The point is, you're listening now. And that changes everything. There is a strange discomfort that arrives when the old role fades. But no new one has taken its place. You wake up, and there's nothing urgent to do. No one needs you to pack a lunch. No one is waiting for advice. There are no birthday parties to plan, no rides to give, no school papers to sign. It should feel like rest. But instead, it feels like falling. Who are you, when you are not the one who holds everything together? For decades, your value was visible. Tangible. Loud. It came in thank you notes and "Mom, where's my?" in schedules and dinners and doing things for people who needed you. Now the silence feels accusatory. Carl Jung described this as the threshold, the space between identities. The moment in life when what defined you dissolves, and you are asked to meet a part of yourself you've never fully known. It can feel like death, but it's actually a birth. Not of a new role, but of the self beyond the roles. At first, this space feels empty, but it isn't. It's sacred, because here, for the first time in years, maybe ever, you can ask, what do I want? What do I feel? Who am I when I'm not serving everyone else? These questions are terrifying and holy. Most people never ask them. They stay in motion, in performance, in roles. But if you're here, in this chapter of life, it means something in you is ready. Not for answers, but for honesty. There will be days you'll want to go back, to be needed again, to be filled by the busyness of others. But slowly you'll begin to see. You are not empty. You are not lost. You are becoming. At first, the idea of wanting something just for yourself feels strange. Selfish, maybe, or indulgent. You've spent so many years anticipating everyone else's needs, that when the question comes, what do you want? You don't know how to answer. You were the giver, the one who kept things together, the one who held space for everyone else. And somewhere along the way, you stopped holding space for yourself. Now, in the quiet, something soft begins to stir. A desire. Not loud, not demanding, but honest. You want beauty, peace, laughter that isn't for someone else's benefit, stillness that doesn't feel like punishment, touch maybe, or solitude, or music that moves only you. You begin to realize you are allowed to want things that don't make you useful. Carl Jung believed the second half of life is when the soul asks different questions. Not what should I do, but who am I really? And in that question lives permission. To dream again, to try, to fail without shame, to say no, to say yes to things that once felt impossible or irrelevant. Wanting without guilt is a radical act for someone who is always given. But this is the path now. Not toward selfishness, but toward wholeness. Because when you allow yourself to want, even just a little, you begin to remember that you are not just what others needed. You are also what you need. And what a powerful thing that is. To rediscover yourself. Not because someone asked you to, but because the silence finally made room. It starts quietly, like most things in this season of life. A memory surfaces, then another. You're pouring tea, and suddenly, you remember a morning 30 years ago. A small moment, a forgotten birthday, a hurried goodbye, a door that closed just a little too quickly. You tell yourself it doesn't matter anymore. You've moved on, but the feeling remains. Not because you want to dwell in the past, but because the past is still dwelling in you. Carl Jung believed that whatever remains unconscious will find a way to direct our lives. And now, in the quiet of this chapter, the unspoken begins to rise. You remember the things you never said, the words you swallowed to keep the peace, the pain you hid so others wouldn't feel guilty. You recall the times you needed to be held, but instead held everyone else. You see your younger self, not as weak, not as foolish, but as someone who did what they had to do to survive love. That is not failure. That is adaptation. But now, you no longer need to adapt. Now you can tell the truth, even if only to yourself. That moment hurt me. I felt invisible then. I loved them more than they could love me back. And just by naming it, you begin to reclaim it. This is not about blame. It's not about rewriting the story to make others villains. It's about acknowledging yourself, the child you once were, the parent you became, the sacrifices you made that no one clapped for, the quiet tears behind closed doors. You held so much. Now, you get to lay some of it down, not to erase the past, but to free yourself from repeating it in silence. Sometimes reconciliation isn't with a person. It's with a memory, an expectation, a part of yourself you exiled in order to keep going. And now, that part is returning, not to punish you, but to be welcomed home. This is the beginning of integration, where all the versions of you, the giver, the forgotten, the strong, the quiet, begin to sit at the same table. No longer fighting, no longer hiding, just present, together. You are not the pain. You are the one who survived it. And now, you are the one who gets to heal it. Boundaries were never your native language. You learned early that love was something to protect, not question. That silence kept things peaceful. That saying yes was how you proved your worth. And so for years, maybe decades, you became the reliable one, the available one, the one who bent so others wouldn't break. But now, something inside you is changing. It doesn't roar. It doesn't rage. It simply knows. It knows when a conversation leaves you drained, when a request feels more like an expectation, when you're being invited into guilt, not connection. And for the first time, you consider saying no. Not out of bitterness, not to hurt anyone, but because your soul is tired of abandoning itself. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And who you truly are is not someone made only to accommodate. Boundaries are not walls. They are windows through which your true self can finally breathe. They say, "I matter too. This hurts me, even if I never said it before. I am no longer available for love that costs me my peace." At first, it feels unnatural. You say no and brace for backlash. You worry they'll think you've changed. And the truth is you have. Not into someone harsher, but into someone clearer. Boundaries don't mean you love them less. They mean you love yourself enough to stop disappearing. They mean you're finally done performing the role of the good parent, the flexible one, the emotional sponge. Now, you're learning a different kind of goodness, one rooted in truth, one that no longer sacrifices your wholeness for someone else's comfort. And it is in that truth that your soul begins to rise. You are not selfish. You are healing. You are not withholding. You are redefining love. Because love, real love, honors both hearts. And the first one that must be honored now is yours. There's a kind of silence that comes after the roles are gone, after the boundaries are drawn, after the giving slows down. It's not just quiet. It's still. At first, it feels like loneliness. You walk through the house and hear your own footsteps. You make dinner for one. You sit with a book, not because you're waiting for someone to join you, but because no one is coming. And a voice inside whispers, "This is it. This is what's left." But Carl Jung saw something else in these spaces. He wrote that solitude is where the psyche begins to speak. And maybe what you're feeling isn't the absence of others. Maybe it's the presence of yourself. For so long, you were surrounded by noise, by need, by distraction disguised as duty. Now, in this quieter place, your soul is finally audible. It says, you don't need to perform. You don't need to prove. You are enough, even in stillness. Loneliness without reflection is despair. But loneliness with attention becomes sanctuary. This is not the end of your relevance. It's the beginning of your return. You begin to notice things. The way sunlight moves across the floor in the afternoon. The rhythm of your breath. The pulse of long-forgotten desires waking inside you. You're not losing connection. You're changing the direction of it. From outward to inward. And it's here, in the quietest room of your life. That's something sacred begins. Self-companionship. Not the kind that numbs with distractions, but the kind that listens, that forgives, that makes tea for one, and says, you still matter. Because you do. Not because someone else said so, but because you are alive, and still becoming. This loneliness is not empty. It's spacious. And within it, your true self is finally coming home. Wisdom is not what you thought it would be. It doesn't arrive with applause. It doesn't wear medals or speak from podiums. It doesn't come with books written in your name or children rising in gratitude. No, wisdom, real wisdom, arrives like twilight. Quiet, soft, unapologetic. It shows up in the stillness of an ordinary moment. When you're folding laundry or staring out the window, and you suddenly understand something you never had the space to feel before. Carl Jung believed that the second half of life was not about ambition, but integration. Not about doing more, but becoming whole. And now, without the noise of demands, without the pressure to be useful, you begin to see what you've carried all along. Wisdom, not the kind that seeks attention, but the kind that sees through illusion. You notice things differently now. You hear what people mean beneath what they say. You feel what is not being spoken in a room. You've become fluent in silence, not because you chose it, but because you survived it. And that survival, that graceful, quiet, unseen strength, is wisdom. There was a time when you measured your worth by how much you could do, how much you could give, how many people needed you. Now, a deeper truth begins to take shape. You are valuable even when no one is watching, even when the room is empty. even when your phone is silent, even when your name doesn't come up in conversation. You begin to notice that peace is not made of perfection. It's made of presence. And presence doesn't require permission. You find yourself slowing down. Not out of fatigue, but out of choice. You're no longer rushing to fix, to solve, to anticipate. You're listening. To your body. To your breath. To the younger version of you who never got to rest. Wisdom is not loud. It's not a TED Talk. It's not a post that goes viral. It's the moment you sit with your pain, without needing it to end. It's the way you can say no, with softness and clarity. It's how you stop trying to be understood, and start understanding yourself. And this shift, this quiet power, begins to ripple. People notice it, even if they can't name it. Some will grow distant. Your refusal to abandon yourself may challenge their comfort. Others may draw closer, magnetized by the safety they feel in your presence. But here's what's changed. You're not adjusting your truth to keep anyone near, because wisdom doesn't beg. It invites, and it never chases. There's a moment, and maybe it's already happened, when someone disappoints you, and instead of spiraling, you just breathe. You say to yourself, this is who they are, and I still choose peace. That's wisdom. There's a day when you're not invited, not remembered, not celebrated. And you feel it, yes, but doesn't undo you. Because you've learned. Your presence is not diminished by their absence. You've stopped performing, stopped proving, stopped waiting for someone else to define your worth. You've begun to root yourself in something unshakable. Your own knowing. The knowing that came from years of holding pain with grace. From watching your love go unreturned and still loving anyway. From listening deeply to others and now, finally, to yourself. You carry that wisdom in your spine now. You walk into a room and don't shrink. You leave a room and don't wonder if you were too much. You rest without guilt. You speak with softness, not apology. Because you know, you are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to live in alignment with yourself. And that is freedom. It doesn't mean life is easy now. You still feel things deeply. You still miss what you lost. You still wish, sometimes, that the ones you love would see you clearly. But you no longer wait for that seeing to begin your life. You're already living it. You're not bitter. You're not resentful. You're just clear. And in that clarity, you've made room for beauty again. You watch the birds outside your window and feel joy. You hear a song from decades ago and let it move you. You cry, not because you're broken, but because something in you is finally soft enough to be moved. Wisdom has nothing to prove. It simply is. It arrives slowly, over years of heartbreak and forgiveness. Over days spent wondering if you mattered, and mornings when you decide, quietly, that you do. It's not what the world told you wisdom would look like, but it's what your soul has always known. That real power doesn't dominate. It grounds. It connects. It allows. And so now, when someone asks what you've learned, you don't offer a list. You offer presence. You sit with them. You listen. You see what they're not saying, because you remember how it felt to not be seen. You don't need to speak loudly. Your stillness is enough. You don't need to impress. Your being is enough. You don't need to justify your value. Your breath is enough. You are enough. You always were. Now, you simply know it. After everything, the silence, the forgetting, the rediscovery, the boundaries, the wisdom, there comes a quiet question. Am I allowed to feel joy again? Not the kind of joy that looks perfect in photographs. Not the kind that depends on someone else showing up, but the kind that sneaks in when you are simply present. Joy in your morning tea, in the breeze that moves the curtain, in the song that plays just when you need it, in the memory that makes you smile without pain. At first, it feels like betrayal. You've spent so long managing grief. You've become intimate with loss, with letting go, with the beauty of solitude and the healing power of silence. But now, something in you wants to laugh and not feel guilty about it. Carl Jung believed that wholeness included both shadow and light. And perhaps this is what you're discovering now. You are not just what you survived. You are also what you still dream. You can miss what was and still fall in love with what is. You can honor the depth of your pain and still say yes to pleasure. You can carry the wisdom of your silence and still let music move your body. You can light a candle, put flowers on your table, paint something, read in the sun, walk without destination. Not because it means something, but because you can. Because joy is not a reward. It is a birthright. And somewhere along the way, you forgot you were allowed to feel it. You were so busy being strong, so careful not to take up space, so committed to being useful, that you forgot what it felt like to simply enjoy being alive. But now, in this chapter, after all the unlearning, after all the releasing, you are free to receive, to take pleasure in what is simple, what is small, what is yours. You no longer need to ask for permission, not from your past, not from your family, not from the world that only seemed to value you when you were giving. You are allowed to give to yourself now, without guilt, without fear, without explanation. This joy, this soft, sacred human joy, is your final turning, not away from pain, but toward integration, a life where you can feel everything, the ache, the peace, the desire, the laughter, and call none of it wrong. You are not starting over. You are continuing, wiser, braver, more honest, more you than you've ever been. And if someone asks, what changed? You'll smile gently and say, I remembered myself. If this journey spoke to something in you, some silent truth you've carried, some feeling you thought no one else understood, consider liking this video. And if you want to walk further with us, into these quiet, honest places where the soul can breathe, subscribe. You are not alone here, and you're always welcome back.